Chapter 20. Cat Holland Hibbert makes a phone call. Alternate, 7 months is long enough. Cat Holland Hibbert was halfway through not listening to a man explain something incorrectly when her phone rang. She glanced down at the screen and blinked. Elias O'Toole. Well, that was new. She lifted one finger to the man across the table, an Ottawa consultant who believed volume was a substitute for accuracy, and stepped outside into the narrow alley behind the pub. Vancouver rain hung in the air, undecided, like a thought that hadn't yet learned to commit. She answered on the third ring. "Either someone's dead," she said, "or you've finally realized you miss me." There was a pause, not awkward, measured. Then Elias O'Toole's voice, calm, level, unchanged by time. "Neither." Kat smiled despite herself. "Good," she said. "I'm booked solid on funerals this quarter, and you don't miss people. You just reorganize them." She leaned back against the brick, listening now. From inside the pub, music leaked through the door. Annie Lennox, "No More I Love Yous." Kat huffed a quiet laugh. "Of course." "Where are you?" she asked. "Vancouver Island," Elias said, "north of Campbell River." That earned him her full attention. "You don't go north unless you're hiding or hunting," she said. "Which is it?" "Neither," he replied. "I'm stationary." Kat closed her eyes. Elias O'Toole, stationary. "Well," she said slowly, "this is officially the strangest thing that's happened today, and a man just tried to mansplain my own expense report to me." He didn't rush her. He never did. "I need help," Elias said. The smile faded from her mouth. "Now you have my attention," she said. "With what?" "There's a woman," he said. "Ah." Kat's expression softened, curiosity blooming into something sharper. "I knew it," she said. "You disappear for 7 months and suddenly there's a woman." "This isn't that," Elias said immediately. Kat laughed under her breath. "You always say that right before it is exactly that." She listened harder now. Beneath his voice she could hear the soft crackle of a fire, wind moving through trees, the kind of quiet cities couldn't counterfeit. "And?" she prompted. "She's been through significant trauma," he continued. "Physical, psychological. She's recovering, but she's isolated. I can't be the only axis her world turns on." Kat stopped pacing. That was honest, painfully so. "You're saying that," she said carefully, "because you know when you're too much?" "Yes, that mattered." "Does she know you're calling me?" Kat asked. "Yes." "Did she ask for me?" "No." Kat nodded, unseen. "Good. That means she doesn't know what she needs yet." She shifted her weight, rain dampening her hair. "What do you want me to do, Elias?" "I want you to help her reconnect to herself," he said, "to other people. And I want you to help me make sure I don't mistake responsibility for possession." Kat swallowed. "That's unusually self-aware," she said. "Are you okay?" "No," he said simply. The pub door opened again, releasing a burst of sound. "Blondie, call me." Kat rolled her eyes skyward. Subtlety was dead. "Is she dangerous?" Kat asked. "She's exceptional," Elias replied. Kat smiled. That answered everything. "And you?" she asked. "Are you in danger?" A pause. Longer now. "Yes," he said. "Of getting yourself killed?" "No." "Of falling in love?" she teased. Another pause, fractional, honest. "Yes." Kat exhaled slowly. "When do you want me there?" she asked. "About a month," Elias said. "I need to close something first." "Of course you do," Kat said. "And accommodations?" "One bed," he said. "A couch." Kat laughed outright, delighted and a little wicked. "Oh, Elias O'Toole," she said, "you really do court chaos." "I trust you," he replied. That landed harder than anything else he'd said. "Fine," she said. "I'll come. I'll help. I'll behave." "I didn't ask that," he said. She grinned. "You never do." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "What's her name?" "Juliet." Kat rolled it around in her mouth, considered it. "Pretty," she said, "and probably dangerous." Yes, Elias agreed. They ended the call without ceremony. Kat stood in the alley for a long moment after, rain cooling her skin, thoughts already reorganizing her calendar and her expectations. 7 months, she smiled to herself. That's long enough, she murmured. Miles away, Elias set his phone down by the fire and stared into the flames. He didn't know exactly what he'd just unleashed, only that the balance he'd worked so carefully to maintain was about to shift. And somewhere in the city, Kat Holland Hibbert ordered another drink, already intrigued by a woman she hadn't met, and a man she'd never quite stopped measuring herself against. Chapter 21. Bethany gets closer. Alternate, this is not a coincidence. Bethany POV. The problem with patterns was that once you saw them, they refused to be unseen. Bethany Winter sat cross-legged on the narrow motel bed, laptop balanced on her thighs, legal pad to her left, half-cold coffee to her right. The room smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and damp carpet, temporary, anonymous, designed to forget you the moment you left. The radio on the dresser played quietly as it always did when she worked. Rush, Subdivisions. She hadn't chosen it, the radio had. That felt on brand. Any escape might help to smooth the unattractive truth. Bethany snorted softly and scribbled another note. The investigation had started as a logistics problem. Northern supply disappearances, shipping anomalies that didn't quite rise to the level of panic, but refused to stay buried in the noise of ordinary commerce. Containers that left ports and never arrived. Inventory that existed on paper and nowhere else. Routes that bent north for no economic reason. At first she'd thought it was incompetence, and then greed, then something older. She scrolled through satellite images, overlaid shipping data, customs logs, the screen filled with lines and dots that meant nothing individually, and everything together. There you are, she murmured. The cluster was tightening. She leaned back against the headboard, rubbing her eyes, letting the music wash through her. I guess we're not alone. Yeah, she said quietly. No kidding. She'd learned over the years to trust the prickle at the base of her skull, the sense that the room had shifted while she wasn't looking, that the story had acquired weight. This wasn't just smuggling, this was choreography. Someone, or several someones, were using folklore as camouflage. Indigenous legends, northern myths, stories that made auditors roll their eyes and bureaucrats look the other way. Kajutajuk, the shapeshifter, the terror of the tundra, perfect cover. Bethany flipped a page on her pad and drew a rough map of British Columbia, circling Vancouver Island, then tracing north with her pen. Her breath caught, just slightly. Why you? She asked the map. She hadn't meant to say it out loud. Vancouver Island again. Not just as a waypoint, but as a gravitational center. Too many data threads curved toward it. Too many near misses. Too many names she half recognized but couldn't place. She pulled up a personnel file, one she'd flagged earlier but dismissed as irrelevant. O'Toole, Elias, former gang affiliate, military service, private investigations, clean record since, quiet, avoidant. She frowned. Why are you here? She murmured. The radio betrayed her, as radios did. Nowhere is the dreamer or the misfit so alone. Bethany closed her eyes. For a moment, just a moment, the room tilted, and she was 17 again, standing in a doorway that smelled like cigarettes and fear, her little sister asleep somewhere behind her, the sound of a man's footsteps heavy in the hall. She swallowed hard and forced herself back to the present. This wasn't about that. This was about now. She opened another file, another shipment, another shell company with a familiar signature, financial obfuscation elegant enough to suggest intelligence training. Smirnova. She'd never met him, didn't want to, but she'd learned the shape of his thinking the way you learn the shape of a weapon you hoped never to see in your hand. He liked distance, he liked control, and lately, he's sloppy, she said softly. That was new. People like Smirnova didn't get sloppy unless something had disrupted their balance, unless someone had said no. Bethany stood and crossed to the window, pushing aside the thin curtain. Outside, rain streaked the glass, blurring the parking lot into impressionist smears of light. Vancouver Island lay out there somewhere, forests, lakes, small towns that didn't make the news, and someone was hiding in them, someone important. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a secure message from Ottawa. Progress? Bethany typed back without sitting down. Yes. Convergence confirmed, requesting authorization to relocate operations closer to Vancouver Island. The reply came faster than she liked. Granted, but carefully. She smiled thinly. Always, she said. The radio shifted tracks. Rush. The analog kid. Bethany laughed quietly, a sound halfway between amusement and nerves. Fine, she told the room. I get it. She packed her laptop, slid the legal pad into her bag, and reached for her jacket. As she did, her hand brushed the small scar at her wrist, a relic of a life she'd survived and a reminder of the cost of not paying attention. She paused, breath catching again. This time the feeling was different. Not dread, not fear, recognition. I'm coming, she said softly, to the rain, to the island, to the tightening knot of fate she couldn't yet name. Somewhere very close now the truth was waiting, and Bethany Winter was done circling it. Chapter 22. Mistress Cat arrives undressed. Alternate, some people don't ease in. Cat Holland Hibbert arrived the way she did most things in her life, deliberately, unapologetically, and without checking whether the room was ready for her. The truck had barely come to a stop before the engine ticked itself quiet, and the forest reclaimed the sound. Upper Quinsam Lake lay beyond the trees, smooth as a held breath. The cabin sat where it always had, log walls silvered by rain, chimney whispering smoke, cats already suspicious of change. Inside, music played. Sade, Is It a Crime? Juliet noticed it first. She always did. She stood at the small kitchen counter, mug warm between her hands, hair still damp from the lake. Elias was near the window, shirtless, toweling his hair, pretending not to listen for engines he'd already clocked 3 seconds before they arrived. The knock came once, firm, confident. Elias opened the door. Cat stepped inside. She was naked, not posed, not offering, simply present, skin pale gold in the low light, curves unhidden, posture relaxed like this was the most natural thing in the world, which to her it was. "Hello, Elias O'Toole," she said pleasantly. "You look well." The cats froze. Nova's tail flicked once, decisively. Juliet's brain short-circuited. Cat's gaze moved, slow and appreciative, landing on Juliet with immediate interest. Not predatory, not assessing value, just curious, warm, alert. "Well," Cat said, smiling. "There you are." Juliet swallowed, hard. She stopped. Tried again. "You're naked?" Cat glanced down at herself as if this were news. "Yes, I tend to be." Elias closed the door without comment, which was, in itself, a comment. "You said you'd behave," he remarked mildly. "I am behaving," Cat replied. "I didn't bring luggage." She finally reached for the throw blanket draped over the chair, wrapping it loosely around her shoulders. Not to cover herself so much as to acknowledge other people existed. The music betrayed them again. "Is it a crime that I still want you?" Juliet laughed. She couldn't help it. A soft, incredulous sound that escaped before fear could catch it. Cat's eyes lit. "Oh, I like you," she said immediately. Juliet flushed. "You just met me." "Yes," Cat agreed, "and I already like you." She turned back to Elias, expression shifting just enough to remind him of everything they'd never done and everything they'd carefully avoided. "You didn't tell me she was this," Cat said. "I didn't tell you anything about her," Elias replied. That was the point. Cat studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair." She looked back to Juliet. "I'm Cat." "Juliet," she said. Then, because honesty had become habit here, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now." Cat smiled, not sharp, not dominant, gentle, unexpected. "You're doing it," she said. "You're breathing. You're standing. You're letting yourself be seen." She shrugged. "The rest can wait." Elias exhaled, tension easing just enough to be survivable. The triangle didn't announce itself with drama, it didn't need to. It ignited quietly, in glances held a fraction too long, in old familiarity brushing against new gravity, in the way the room seemed suddenly too small and perfectly balanced all at once. Outside, the lake reflected the sky without judgment. Inside, the music played on, and none of them pretended this was coincidence. Chapter 23. The cabin notices. Alternate. Everything changes without moving. The cabin had opinions. It had always had them, about weather, about strangers, about how many people it was willing to hold before it began to creak in protest. But this was new. This was the sound of balance shifting without furniture being moved, of weight redistributed, of breath patterns changing. Inside, music flowed like a held nerve. Fleetwood Mac, The Chain. The opening notes threaded through the room, quiet but insistent, as if the walls themselves were humming along. Juliet felt it first. Not the song, the attention. Kat sat cross-legged on the rug near the fireplace, wrapped loosely in a sweater she'd found and claimed without ceremony. Her hair was still damp from the lake, skin flushed with cold and confidence. She watched Juliet the way some people watched art, not to own it, not to improve it, but to understand how it made them feel. Juliet shifted under that gaze, not shrinking, adjusting. She had been looked at her entire adult life, appraised, weighed, consumed, but this was different. There was no transaction in it, no expectation of performance, just interest. You don't disappear when people enter the room, Kat observed mildly, as if commenting on the weather. Juliet blinked. What? Kat smiled. You stay. Most people like you learn to vanish. You didn't. Juliet swallowed, heat blooming low and unexpected. I didn't know that was a skill. It is, Kat said. You mastered it without trying. Across the room, Elias leaned against the counter, arms folded. Not defensive, but braced. He felt like a man who had spent months building a careful structure, only to realize it was about to be tested for load-bearing integrity. The radio, traitor that it was, shifted tracks. Sarah McLachlan, fumbling towards ecstasy. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Oh, for fuck's sake, he muttered. Kat laughed. You live with this thing? It hates me, he replied. Personally. Juliet smiled before she could stop herself. Kat noticed. So, Kat said lightly, turning back to Juliet, how long have you been practicing restraint? Juliet glanced at Elias, then back at Kat. 7 months, Kat hummed. Impressive and exhausting. Elias stiffened. She sets the pace. Kat's gaze flicked to him. Sharp, affectionate, challenging. I know, I wasn't questioning your discipline. She tilted her head. I'm questioning the cost. The music slid into something softer. UB40. I can't help. Falling in love with you. Juliet laughed, a little breathless. Does the radio do this on purpose? Yes, Elias and Kat said together. They exchanged a look, old, familiar, charged. Juliet felt it like a shift in air pressure. Okay, Kat said, standing smoothly. New rules, since I'm here. Elias raised an eyebrow. You don't get to... I absolutely do, Kat interrupted cheerfully. But you'll like them. She turned to Juliet. You are not an object of recovery. You are a participant in your own desire. Juliet's breath caught. Kat turned to Elias. And you are not the sole steward of her safety. You don't get to martyr yourself into invisibility. Silence fell, not uncomfortable, but heavy with truth. The cabin popped as the fire shifted. Elias exhaled slowly. That's going to be, difficult. Kat smiled. Good. Juliet looked between them, something new unfolding in her chest. Not fear, not obligation, possibility. The cabin noticed. It settled, beams creaking once, as if acknowledging the change. Outside, the lake reflected 3 silhouettes where there had once been 2. And inside, without anyone touching, everything had already changed. Chapter 24. Static clears for now. Alternate, here comes the sun, reluctantly. Morning came carefully. It did not crash through the trees or demand attention. It arrived the way healing sometimes did, softly, almost apologetically, as if aware it wasn't yet trusted. The radio clicked itself awake before anyone else did. The Beatles, Here Comes the Sun. Elias lay still, listening. The cabin smelled like wood smoke, damp earth, and something newly settled. The lake outside was a sheet of pale gold, mist lifting in slow, deliberate curls as sunlight found its way through the firs. Juliet slept. That alone felt like a victory. She lay on her side, hair fanned across the pillow, breathing deep and even in a way Elias had learned not to take for granted. No tension in her shoulders, no twitching hands, no half-formed sounds of panic caught behind her teeth. Just sleep. Kat sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket, one hand absently stroking Nova's back as the cat purred with the ferocity of something deeply satisfied. She hasn't moved all night, Kat murmured. No, Elias said. She usually does. Kat glanced at him, really looked. You're exhausted, she observed. So are you, he replied. She smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. The radio, cruelly earnest, shifted tracks. Jimmy Cliff, I can see clearly now. Kat snorted softly. Lies, but optimistic ones. They sat in companionable quiet, neither reaching for the moment. The stakes were too clear now to rush. You know this changes things, Kat said eventually. Yes. You know she's going to choose, Kat continued. And that choice might not include the version of you that hides behind restraint. Elias nodded once. I know. Kat watched Juliet sleep, expression unreadable. And you're still willing to stay? Yes. That earned him a look, one of respect, not challenge. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The radio betrayed them again. Katrina and the waves, walking on sunshine. Kat groaned quietly. I hate this thing. It's honest, Elias replied. Somewhere else, far from the lake and the quiet and the fragile peace of a morning earned the hard way, Victor Smirnova studied a report. 3 names. 3 converging threads. He did not smile. Problems, he said softly, and for the first time he meant it. Back at Upper Quinsam Lake, Juliet shifted in her sleep, a small sound of contentment escaping her lips. Elias and Kat both stilled, unwilling to disturb it. For now the static had cleared. For now the lake shimmered, the music played, and the story, having found its footing, took its first steady breath forward.